Hey everyone, get ready because today we're diving into animal intelligence.
Oh, cool.
We're going way back to 1911.
1911, that's when Edward L. Thorndike really kind of blew things open with his research on animal intelligence.
Yeah, his monograph, Animal Intelligence, is like a cornerstone of the field.
It is. It is. Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, people are still using his methods today.
Yeah.
Like we're talking over a century later.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. So for today's deep dive, we're going to unpack his key findings, especially what surprised him about how animals learn. So did his findings match what people believed back then?
Not always. You know, one of the things that made Thorndike's work so important was his use of puzzle boxes.
Puzzle boxes.
Yeah.
What are those?
So picture this.
Okay.
Hungry cat,
Okay.
stuck in a box.
All right, I'm with you.
The only way for the cat to escape and get the food outside the box is by doing something specific, like pulling a loop or pressing a lever.
Okay.
Thorndike documented everything so meticulously, and what he found was that the cats weren't solving these puzzles by reasoning or having some kind of aha moment.
They weren't like, oh, I see, the lever is the key.
No,
Dun-
no. Instead, what he observed was a gradual process of trial and error. Cats would try all sorts of random things like scratching, biting, squeezing, until they accidentally did the thing that opened the door.
So it sounds like just totally random at first.
It seems that way.
Like they're just getting lucky?
Yeah, but what's fascinating is this trial and error process. It's not just random flailing.
Oh.
Thorndike's time curves, which track how long it took them to escape with each attempt, show us it's more about a gradual refinement.
Mm.
Almost like carving a path in the brain, each successful escape reinforces that connection between action and reward.
Interesting. So the more they did it, the faster they got out.
Exactly.
Was that true for all animals? Like were some quicker learners?
Well, Thorndike actually used different animals,
Oh.
cats, dogs, and even chicks. And yes, he found some interesting differences in their learning speeds, which were often tied to their natural instincts.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm sure cats, being natural climbers, were probably great at anything involving pulling things down from up high.
Yeah, you got it. But Thorndike also threw in some curveballs. He created boxes where escape depended on actions that were totally out of character for that animal.
Like teaching a fish to climb a tree?
Not quite that extreme.
Oh, yeah.
But he did things like putting cats in boxes where they could only escape by licking or scratching themselves.
He really made them work for it.
Yeah, he did.
So did those poor kitties ever figure it out?
Eventually.
Okay.
But it took them much longer. These seemingly simple actions just didn't click as easily. It's as if they couldn't quite grasp the connection between, say, licking their paw and the door suddenly swinging open.
So it really hammered home that idea that their learning is really about connecting a very specific action to the outcome they want.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And here's where it gets even more interesting. Back then, people commonly believed that animals could learn by watching others.
Right. Like monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah.
Did Thorndike buy that?
Well, he was skeptical, so naturally he had to test it.
Oh.
He designed this clever experiment with a two-compartment box.
Okay.
One animal, the demonstrator, knew the trick to escape and get the food reward, while the other animal, the observer, got to watch the whole show.
So the observer had a front row seat.
Mm-hmm.
Did they pick up on any tips?
Surprisingly, not really. The observer animals didn't show any significant improvement in their escape times. They still relied on trial and error, just like the animals that hadn't seen a demonstration.
Huh. So imitating their way to freedom was a bust. But hold on, I'm thinking, what about all those videos online of animals like copying each other or even mimicking humans?
That's a great question. It seems like Thorndike debunked imitation completely, but the truth is animal learning is complex. His experiments specifically targeted a certain type of learning. Modern research suggests that animals might indeed imitate in certain contexts, especially when social cues are involved. But that's a story for another deep dive.
Right. So imitation might not be totally out of the picture, but it certainly wasn't as simple as everyone assumed back then.
Exactly. And Thorndike wasn't done shaking things up. He also took issue with how people were using terms like instinct and association
Okay.
to explain animal behavior. He felt like these terms were being tossed around too loosely
Mm-hmm.
and wanted more precise definitions.
Yeah, that's a good point. People probably just said instinct whenever an animal did anything even slightly complex. Like, oh, a spider knows how to build a web because, well, instinct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thorndike argued that instincts weren't some magical force. He believed they were specific inherited behaviors triggered by specific stimuli. So it's not that a spider has this single instinct for web building, but rather a whole set of instincts for spinning silk, reacting to vibrations, and so on, all triggered at the right time and in the right order.
So it's like a chain reaction of smaller instincts rather than one big one.
That's a great way to put it. And he saw learning as the process of building upon these instinctive behaviors through experience.
Okay, I'm starting to see how he was really pushing back against, like, the conventional wisdom of his time.
Yeah.
What about the term association? Did he have a different take on that one too?
He did.
Okay.
He argued that an association isn't just some vague connection between two things. It's a very specific link formed in the animal's brain between a sensory experience and the impulse to act.
So it's not just, I see a lever, I think about food.
Yeah.
It's more like, I see a lever, I feel this urge to press it.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And that link becomes stronger if pressing the lever leads to a reward, like getting that tasty food. And if it doesn't, well, the connection weakens. It all comes back to trial and error.
Right, so it sounds like Thorndike was really pushing for a much more rigorous and scientific approach to studying animal behavior.
Absolutely.
Cool.
He was laying the groundwork for a whole new way of thinking about animal minds.
This is all so fascinating.
Hmm.
So far, we've debunked a few myths, like that learning through imitation is as simple as we thought. And we've started to see how Thorndike was refining the very language we use to talk about animal behavior.
Yeah, and we've only just scratched the surface.
I was going to say there's got to be more.
In the next part, we'll dive deeper into Thorndike's exploration of the limits of animal intelligence. We'll uncover how his work challenged even more assumptions about animal minds.
Oh, this is good. I can't wait.
Hmm.
Stay tuned, everyone. This deep dive is just getting started. All right, welcome back. Last time we were talking about Edward Thorndike and his research on animal intelligence.
Puzzle boxes, trial and error.
Yeah.
Cats licking themselves to escape. It's amazing stuff.
I know, right? So much for a monkey. You see monkey do.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, how much do our furry friends really get?
Right.
Like, where do we even begin to understand their intelligence?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. Thorndike didn't stop at just those basic experiments. He wanted to see how far animal intelligence could go. What were the limits?
So, like, what other big questions did he try to answer?
Well, one of the things he looked at was reasoning.
Reasoning.
Could animals solve problems not just through trial and error, but by actually thinking things through like we do,
Yeah.
making deductions?
Like using logic.
Exactly. Could they understand a situation and figure out the solution?
Okay, I'm curious. Did his experiments show that animals could reason?
Not really. Time after time, his research showed that animals relied heavily on trial and error, even with problems that a human could solve instantly with a little bit of logic.
Huh. So, like, what kind of problem are we talking about?
Well, imagine a puzzle box with a door that opens by pressing a button.
Okay, pretty simple.
Simple, right? But here's the twist. The button needs to be turned a specific way to unlock it.
Oh, okay. So it's not enough to just press it. You have to press it just right.
Exactly.
I can see how that would trip them.
Yeah, and even when a cat accidentally turned the button the right way, they didn't seem to get what they did. The next time they just went back to their random pawing and pressing, no sign that they understood that one specific movement was the key.
So they weren't like,
Right.
I think I need to turn it this way.
No, it was more like, well, I touched it somehow and the door opened. Let's just try everything again.
So no analyzing the situation.
I know.
No deductions.
It was all about that immediate reward, not the how or why.
Wow. So even with simple mechanics, reasoning was out of the picture.
Yeah.
Did Thorndike test anything else along those lines?
He did. He also looked into whether animals could grasp cause and effect.
Cause and effect.
You know, something we learn as babies. If I drop this, it falls.
Yeah, cause and effect. Pretty basic stuff.
Yeah.
How did he test that with animals?
Well, he used another clever puzzle box. This time, the cats could escape by pulling a string attached to the door latch.
Okay.
But the string was hidden.
Hidden.
Hidden. They couldn't actually see the connection between pulling the string and the door opening.
Oh, wow. So it was like a test of faith. Could they figure out that something was happening behind the scenes?
And they failed. Miserably.
Oh, no.
They pulled at everything, but they couldn't grasp that idea of a hidden mechanism. That simple cause and effect relationship, something so obvious to us, it just seemed to be beyond their comprehension.
Okay, so no reasoning, no simple imitation. Are we saying that animals just operate on pure instinct then?
Well, Not quite. Thorndike knew that animals could definitely learn and adapt, but he wanted to understand exactly how those processes worked.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, do animals have concepts? Can they group things together based on shared characteristics like we do?
Right, like instead of just reacting to each object as totally unique, they would have to understand broader categories.
Exactly, like food or danger.
Yeah. So not just this apple, but the concept of apple as a whole.
Exactly. So he designed experiments to see if animals could transfer their learning from one situation to another.
Okay.
Like, let's say a cat learns to escape a box by pulling a loop of string.
Okay.
Could it then figure out how to open a box with a different kind of latch?
So could they apply that knowledge more broadly? Like, did they understand how latches work in general?
Right. And what he found was there was some evidence of this transfer.
They could do it.
Cats that had mastered one type of latch were generally faster at figuring out a new one.
Hmm. So does that mean they had formed the concept of a latch?
Well, Thorndike was cautious. He argued that there might be a simpler explanation. He proposed this idea of situational learning.
Situational learning. What is that?
Well, he thought that animals might not react to objects as we define them,
Okay.
but to a broader situation defined by sensory cues.
Okay. Can you give me an example?
Sure, think about walking into a dark room.
Okay.
Even if the light switch is a different style than you're used to,
Okay.
you still know to reach for it in roughly the same spot.
Yeah.
You're not consciously thinking light switch.
Right.
You're just reacting to the whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
Entering a dark room, need light.
Okay. So it's more about recognizing a pattern of sensations that triggers a learned response.
Exactly. And so the cat isn't thinking latch, it's thinking door opening situation.
Interesting.
And the situational learning might explain what's happening. It doesn't require them to have abstract concepts like we do.
Okay. That's a whole different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
But it also makes me wonder, if animals aren't forming concepts the way we do, how different is their understanding of the world?
That's a great question. And that's where Thorndike's work gets really mind blowing. He thought that without those abstract concepts,
Uh,
animals' mental lives might be fundamentally different from ours. They might be experiencing the world as this constant stream of immediate sensations and impulses, without all the meanings and categories that we layer onto it.
wow. It's almost impossible to imagine experiencing the world without concepts. It would be like seeing everything for the first time, all the time, with no way to group things or organize them.
And that, according to Thorndike, might be a glimpse into the animal mind, driven by immediate needs and instinctual responses, where learning is just about forging those direct links between actions and rewards.
That's a humbling thought. Even the smartest animals might be experiencing the world in a way that's just so different from us.
It is. And I think it reminds us that intelligence comes in many forms.
Yeah.
Each species evolves with its own way of thinking, shaped by its needs and its environment.
So Thorndike was not only studying animals, he was challenging our assumptions about what intelligence even is.
Exactly. His work really paved the way for a more nuanced understanding of animal minds, their capabilities, their limitations, and the incredible diversity of ways that they experience the world.
That's fascinating. Welcome back to our deep dive into Edward Thorndike and his fascinating work on animal intelligence.
We've covered so much ground already, those
Yeah.
amazing puzzle boxes.
Yeah. And all those surprising things he found out about how animals learn. It's amazing how much we've learned about animal minds in the past century, like how trial and error plays such a huge role.
Huge.
And all those assumptions about reasoning and imitation being so straightforward, well, Thorndike kind of turned those on their head.
He really did. And then there's that whole idea of situational learning, too. Remember that one?
Yeah. Instead of forming concepts, they're reacting to the whole situation, right? Like all those sensory cues together.
Exactly. It really makes you think about the world from their perspective. But there's one more crucial part of Thorndike's work that we haven't touched on yet.
Oh, really? What's that?
His analysis of those two terms that everyone seemed to be throwing around back then, instinct and association.
Right. He really wanted to define those more rigorously.
He did. He wanted to bring more scientific precision to the whole field.
Yeah. People probably just said instinct whenever an animal did anything complex. Like, oh, a bird builds a nest because, well, instinct. End of story.
That's exactly what he was pushing back against. He thought that kind of thinking was way too simplistic.
So what was his take on instinct then?
He believed that instincts are very specific, inherited patterns of behavior. They're not some mysterious force that just guides animals without any prior experience. They're triggered by specific stimuli in the environment.
So like a pre-programmed response, but only for a very particular situation.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Okay, that makes sense.
For example, it's not that a spider has a single instinct to build a web. It's more like a whole series of instincts,
Okay.
like spinning silk, reacting to vibrations, creating certain patterns. And these instincts are all triggered in a very precise order by the right cues.
So each little step of building a web is actually its own instinct, not just one big, vague web-building instinct.
Exactly. And Thorndike believed that understanding these specific instincts is absolutely key to understanding how animals learn, because he saw learning as a way of modifying those instincts, refining them through experience.
So instead of just being stuck with those pre-programmed responses,
Yeah.
they can actually adjust and adapt based on what happens.
Exactly. They build upon those instinctive foundations.
Okay, so that's instinct. What about association? Did he have a different take on that one too?
He did. He thought that an association wasn't just a vague connection between two things.
Okay.
It's a much more specific link,
Okay.
formed in the animal's brain between a sensory experience and the impulse to act.
So it's not just, I see the lever and I think about food. It's, I see the lever and I have this urge to press it.
Right.
Okay.
It's a direct connection, and that connection gets stronger if the action leads to a reward, like escaping the box and getting the food.
Of course.
And if it doesn't, the connection weakens. So it all goes back to that trial and error learning we talked about earlier.
So it's like a feedback loop. They do something, it works,
Yep.
that strengthens the connection.
Exactly.
And if it doesn't work, well, they're less likely to try it again.
Exactly. Thorndike's focus on really clearly defining these terms and using them in a consistent way was so important.
Yeah.
It really pushed the whole study of animal behavior towards a more objective scientific approach.
He was setting the stage for how we understand animal minds today.
He was. And even though some of his specific findings have been refined or challenged by later research, his influence is undeniable. His work is still shaping the field of animal behavior even now.
It's amazing to think about all those hours he spent watching those cats in those puzzle boxes
Right.
and taking such meticulous notes. He was so ahead of his time.
He was, and his work reminds us that there's so much more to learn about animals, about ourselves, about intelligence itself.
Well said. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Thorndike's animal intelligence, what's one big takeaway you hope people will remember?
I think the most important thing to remember is that the human mind isn't the only form of intelligence out there. Animals experience the world and learn about it in ways that are fundamentally different from us.
That's a good point, and those differences are fascinating.
Yeah.
And worth celebrating.
Exactly.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.
We hope you enjoyed exploring the amazing world of animal intelligence with us.
And keep those minds curious.
Until next time.